What are some of the common faults when it comes to core training? Because many people are doing many different exercises. Some of the exercises aren't necessarily that effective, but also the ones that are more effective, people might be performing those in an incorrect way. And that, in some respects, sums up what this tutorial is about. It's not about the exercise that you're doing, it's more about how you perform the exercise. What are common faults when it comes to core training? Now, when I talk about core training, I don't talk about sit-ups, crunches, side bends, twists, back extensions. I don't see those as core exercises. So they're, in some respects, forgotten about. What I'm talking about is more effective core exercises like your planks, like your side planks, like your bridges, like your bird dogs, and all the more advanced exercises that can come from those. So what we are going to do in this tutorial is talk more about at a beginner level, then intermediate, then advanced. And what are some of the common faults that people make as they go through each of the stages? Because it's not necessarily the exercises that you're performing, it's more to do with how you perform the exercises, and the common faults in some respects are born out of that. Starting at the beginner level, we'll just take two of the exercises, and what we can do with, in some respects, all of these common faults is we can apply them to different exercises. So where I'm just going to be talking really kind of about 4 exercises here, you'll be able to hopefully be able to transfer this information out into many other exercises. So at the beginner's level, what we're looking at is static postures. We're trying to keep things simple and we're trying to build fundamentals. So we're just going to look at the plank and the bird dog. The plank is a static posture, and then we've got a little bit of movement in the bird dog, which we'll talk about. So when we're talking about static exercises, it's about getting the posture right, because when we get the posture right, certain muscles work more effectively, and then other muscles start to sort of switch themselves off, if you will. So we start to target the right muscles in the right way, is what I'm trying to say. So what we want to be able to do, number one, is get that sort of roughly a straight line, ear, shoulder, hip, knee, and ankle. That's the kind of thing that we're looking for. What we do find is this type of position or this type of position. Now, as I mentioned, if you go either into the hips up position or the hips down position, abdominals are in a sense deactivating. And what then is starting to happen is other muscles are starting to do their job for them. So you're not necessarily building the core strength and stability that you think you're building, which goes back to what I was talking about before, which is not the exercise you're performing, it's how you're performing the exercise. So where a lot of people go, yeah, plank's easy, no problem at all with the plank, I can do it. Are they getting the posture right? On my online program, my How to Build Core Strength and Stability online program, I have a half-an-hour workshop on how to perform the plank correctly. All the teaching points, as many common faults as I can think of, and how to correct those common faults, plus how to make it harder and how to make it easier. So we go through that whole thing, and then you can bring that into the 12-week program whilst you're doing it. If we then move on to the bird dog, which is another exercise that I've got a workshop on there for, again, another half-an-hour workshop, all the teaching points, all of the common faults, all the ones that I can think of, all of the ways of correcting it, and how to make it harder, how to make it easier. So the thing with the bird dog is, again, people perform it quite passively, and they just come into this all fours position, just kind of go, and they're not really performing it as they need to perform it. Because number one, you need to be able to keep the posture of the spine, and you need to get the movement from the hip and the shoulder. So what happens is we don't just lift the arm and the leg, because that creates that sort of extended spine and hip and shoulder not moving as much or as far as it could move. What we need to do is slide the hand and the foot away from each other. When we do that, it becomes very different, because we're basically pushing down with the foot here and up with the arm there. So what we're now doing is creating the movement from the hip there, movement from the shoulder there, and maintaining the posture of the spine, which is starting to get your core tuned in to how it wants to work, and the muscles of your core working in the way that you want to work them. So where most people will just go into an exercise and they go, yeah, I can hold a plank, yeah, I can do a bird dog, yeah, I can do a side plank. Are they performing it in the way they need to perform it to be able to grow to the next level? Are the muscles activating in the right way that they need to activate? So when we come into this, we can do so much more. We can clench the fist, we can push the shoulder down in to get some lat activation. We can get the leg nice and straight and the heel up to get some glute activation, but also using the abdominals so we don't overextend and sort of kick the muscles out of sync. So it's all being integrated into that one movement. But all of that comes at the most fundamental level. If we start layering on top before we've built the foundation, we're what I would describe as building the house from the roof down, which no one has done and no one really ever will do. We have to build it from the ground up. But when it comes to exercise, we tend to find people building it from the roof down rather than the ground up. And that's why all of my face-to-face teaching and online training is built in this way, from beginner up to advanced, because we've got to take people through the fundamentals first and then build them up into the advanced level. Now that we start to move up into the intermediate level, and one thing I should say with regards to the programs and programming in this way, what you don't want is you don't want a program to be just beginner and then just intermediate and then just advanced. They need to integrate into each other. So at the beginner level, at the end of the beginner level, just like in my 12-week program, we start to introduce more intermediate exercises. So then when we go up to the intermediate level, we're ready and prepared and it's not as big a jump. And then it's the same when we go from intermediate and advanced. So what we're going to do in this section is look at the plank, which we've done already, but we're going to add a piece to it and we're going to lift an arm up. And the key to this one is what the hips are doing. Because what we don't want them to do, which is the common fault, is people will go like that. And you may see plenty of people performing this type of exercise or lifting a leg up or lifting a limb up, whichever one it may be, arm or leg, and you see some movement of the hip or some rotation of the hip. That rotation and that movement is a physical demonstration that muscles aren't holding the body in position. So when we come into this position, what we want is the hip to be completely still. So what's happening there is as soon as I lift my arm up, all these muscles are more to the side of the torso have got to activate to hold that in position. If my hips are moving, they aren't doing that. So what we need to do, get in that side plank, lift an arm up and lift it up in a way where my hips can stay in position. Now, what that can mean at the start, so again, in the intermediate level, there are layers. So what we need to be able to do is move slowly. So we lift up, move slowly, put down, move slowly. So what we're doing here is we're training our body to hold position, because when you lift slowly, what you can feel is you can feel the hip wanting to move. So you can then counter that movement by either shifting it back to the middle or bringing that hip back down that's trying to kick up. If you do it too quickly, you won't catch it. But if you do it slowly, you can feel the pressure coming off of the arm, and then you can feel the pressure going onto the torso. So you can sort of modulate between the hip and the elbow as you're lifting it up. And it's exactly the same as you're putting it down. So when you put it down slowly, you apply the pressure to the floor slowly, and it takes it slowly away from the torso. So again, you're training sort of in a conscious way to be able to hold the hips in place. If you move too fast, it's all too unconscious and your brain can't keep up with it and your muscles can't keep up with it. If you do it in a slower way, you can consciously do it and everything will sort of, in some respects, stay the way you need it. Obviously, there's going to be some training to hold it in place just naturally, so there's always going to be some movement, but over time, that will start to improve. As that starts to improve, you can speed the movement up. So when we're talking about going from that beginner level to the intermediate level, the beginner level is just getting the postures right, just making sure the body's in the right position, the spine, the torso is tight, so on and so forth. When we come up to intermediate and start to be more dynamic and just move one limb, we need to be able to control all the other compensations that could come in. And that's what we need to be able to do at the intermediate level as we start introducing movement. At the advanced level, we're taking the dynamic nature of the exercise to another level. What we're also going to do is we're going to start to build what would be described as like a speed strength. So at the beginner level, it's endurance, it's strength, it's stability. When we get to the intermediate level, we're taking that endurance, strength and stability to another level and building the stability and the strength more so. What we then do when we get to the advanced level, we talk more about speed, strength and moving quickly. This is where fitness gets taken to another level. You could, in some degree, sports performance get taken to another level. And so we're going to use just a light weight to show this. Now what we're going to do is, essentially, I'm going to try and throw this over my shoulder. Obviously I'm not going to let go of the weight. But what I'm doing here are a few things. So from here, I've got to accelerate the weight. So I've got to throw it up. As I get to the end of movement, which is about when the weight gets about here, I've got to slow it down. And then I've got to pull it back down. But we've got to remember everything that we've learned so far. And that is, we've got to be tight through here. We've got to maintain the position of the spine. And the final thing, when we are integrating this kind of movement, is we need to get the movement from the hips and the shoulder. And we don't want to get pulled around by the weight because it's very easy to do. And that is, again, where we're not getting the exercise right, where we're performing the exercise. I'm doing that, but I'm not necessarily performing it that correctly because I'm not tight, I'm not gripping the floor, I'm not controlling my body, and I'm not moving the weight as fast as I could. So on and so forth. So where you may have sort of kind of got it to start with regards to the exercise, it's not the exercise you're performing, it's how you perform it. Hopefully you're just picking up a few more little tips on what you can bring to the exercise. Obviously this is already in the 12-week program, so if you go there, it's all kind of pre-done for you. You just follow the program and it gets done for you. So what we're trying to do is move this weight as quick as possible, and what you'll notice is you can see that there's movement here, but it's not uncontrolled movement. So as I'm throwing up and pulling down, there's a little bit of motion, but the motion isn't coming from the spine, it's coming from the hip, just moving like that. But again, I'm in control of it. I'm not letting the weight pull me all the way round, and then I'm sort of catching up with it to pull it back down. I'm dictating when I slow it down, so I get it to there and pull it back down. So again, I'm always in control of the weight, and there are many different exercises that this can be applied to, but it's being in control of the weight as it's moving, but also moving from the hips, not the spine, and keeping the spine nice and tense. If you found this tutorial helpful and you want to build core strength and stability, if you're a beginner and you want to take it to the advanced level, please do click the link below, go through to my How to Build Core Strength and Stability 12-week online program with also intermediate and advanced workouts. So when you finish the 12-week program, you've got access to them, you've got the fundamentals to be able to perform the exercises. It's just a case of going to perform them and taking your core strength and stability to the next level.